The twisted metal of the crashed transport ship gleamed dully under the harsh light of three suns. Zara pressed her back against the wreckage, her breathing shallow and labored. Purple blood seeped through the makeshift bandage wrapped around her leg, a wound that should have healed days ago but refused to close properly in this toxic atmosphere. Her people, the Kalari, had left her behind 3 days ago when their rescue ship arrived. The captain had taken one look at her condition and declared her a liability. "Resources are limited," he had said with cold efficiency. "We cannot risk the lives of 40 healthy crew members for one wounded soldier." Zara had watched their ship disappear into the orange sky, taking with it her last hope of seeing her home world again. The planet Zirian 7 was classified as hostile, its atmosphere slowly poisonous to most known species. The emergency rations in her pack would last maybe 2 more days, and then she would face the choice between starvation and eating the local vegetation that would likely kill her faster. She had been part of an exploration team studying the ruins of an ancient civilization when the hegemony attacked. The battle had been swift and brutal, their science vessel no match for the warships that emerged from hyperspace. Most of her team had died in the initial bombardment. Only 12 survivors had made it to the escape pods, scattered across this desolate world. The rescue ship had found the others first, those fortunate enough to land in areas with breathable atmosphere and edible plants. Zara had crashed in the deadlands, where the air burned her lungs and every breath was a struggle. When the rescue team finally located her, she was already too weak to make the journey to their landing site. "We could carry her," one of the younger crew members had suggested, but the captain had shaken his head firmly. "The atmospheric processors on our ship are already overloaded. Adding another person, especially one requiring medical treatment, could cause system failure. We would all die." So they had left her with a week's worth of emergency rations and a transmitter beacon that might attract another ship, though they all knew no one else was likely to venture into this sector. The hegemony controlled this region now, and any vessel broadcasting a distress signal would more likely attract enemy forces than friendly ones. Zara adjusted her position against the wreckage, trying to find a spot where the sharp edges of twisted metal didn't dig into her back. The suns were setting, and soon the temperature would drop below freezing. She had learned to time her rest periods carefully, sleeping during the brief periods when the planet's rotation provided some shelter from the brutal heat or cold. She thought about her family on Kalari Prime, probably already receiving word that she was missing in action. Her younger brother would be devastated. They had always been close, despite the age difference. He had wanted to join the exploration service too, but she had convinced him to stay and help their parents with the family's agricultural business. A distant sound made her freeze. It was mechanical, the unmistakable hum of engines approaching. Her heart leaped with hope before cold reality set in. No friendly ship would approach this world now. It had to be a hegemony patrol, and if they found her alive, her fate would be far worse than a slow death on this hostile planet. She reached for the small plasma pistol at her side, checking its charge one more time. 3 shots remained. She had been saving them, telling herself she might need them for hunting or defense, but deep down she knew what their real purpose would be if capture became inevitable. The engine noise grew louder, and she could see lights moving across the darkening sky. Multiple ships, flying in formation. Definitely military. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows cast by the wreckage, hoping the twisted metal would mask her heat signature from their sensors. The ships passed overhead without stopping, their searchlights sweeping the terrain in regular patterns. They were conducting a systematic search, probably looking for survivors or salvageable technology from the battle. Zara held her breath until the lights disappeared beyond the horizon, then allowed herself to relax slightly. But the encounter reminded her of how precarious her situation had become. Even if she somehow survived the environmental hazards, this world was now crawling with enemy forces. Every day brought new patrols, new searches. It was only a matter of time before one of them detected the wreckage of her escape pod. She fumbled for her emergency kit and withdrew a small medical scanner. The device was nearly drained, but it still showed her vital signs in disturbing detail. Her oxygen saturation was critically low, her cellular regeneration had slowed to almost nothing, and toxin levels in her bloodstream continued to climb. By her calculations, she had perhaps 2 days before organ failure set in. The scanner also detected something else that made her stomach clench with fear. A large mass was moving across the scanner's outer range, something too big and too fast to be any of the native wildlife they had catalogued during their initial survey. It was heading directly toward her location. Zara struggled to her feet, ignoring the sharp pain that shot through her injured leg. She couldn't run far in her condition, but she might be able to find better cover deeper in the wreckage. The transport ship had been massive, and its remains were scattered across several square kilometers. There might be intact compartments she could hide in, perhaps even find additional supplies. She began picking her way carefully through the twisted debris, using her scanner to guide her away from areas with high radiation readings. The ship's reactor had gone critical during the crash, contaminating large sections of the wreckage with deadly energy that would cook her from the inside if she got too close. The movement on her scanner was getting closer. Whatever it was moved with purpose and intelligence, not the random wandering of an animal. She tried to convince herself it might be another survivor, but she knew all the other escape pods had been accounted for. The rescue ship had confirmed it before abandoning her. A new sound reached her ears, different from the engine noise of the patrol ships. This was organic, a series of clicks and whistles that didn't match any known language in the galactic database. She had heard similar sounds during the initial survey, attributed to some form of primitive wildlife, but the intelligence behind this communication was unmistakable. Zara found what looked like an intact storage compartment and crawled inside, pulling the partially collapsed door closed behind her. The space was cramped and filled with the acrid smell of burned electronics, but it offered concealment and some protection from the toxic atmosphere. She activated her scanner's passive mode, hoping to track the approaching entity without revealing her position. The thing was definitely intelligent. It moved through the wreckage with an understanding of the dangers, avoiding the radiation zones she had detected and following paths that suggested knowledge of the ship's original layout. Most disturbing of all, it seemed to be tracking her specifically, adjusting its course whenever she changed position. She checked her plasma pistol again, though she doubted it would be effective against something large enough to register on her scanner from such a distance. Her military training urged her to find a defensive position and prepare for contact, but her rational mind reminded her that fighting would only accelerate her already declining condition. The sounds were getting closer now, accompanied by a new noise that made her blood run cold. Footsteps. Not the padding of animal feet or the scraping of claws, but the deliberate rhythm of a bipedal creature wearing some form of footwear. Whatever was hunting her walked upright and understood technology. Zara pressed herself against the back wall of her hiding place and tried to control her breathing. The emergency training every exploration team member received included protocols for first contact with unknown intelligent species, but those protocols assumed she would have backup, medical support, and a way off the planet if things went wrong. None of those luxuries were available now. The footsteps stopped just outside her hiding place. She could hear the creature moving around the compartment, investigating the area with what sounded like sophisticated equipment. Lights flickered through gaps in the damaged door, scanning beams that swept back and forth with mechanical precision. Then, to her absolute shock, a voice spoke from just outside her hiding place. The words were in perfectly accented galactic standard, the common language used for trade and diplomacy throughout known space. "I know you're in there," the voice said calmly. "My thermal sensors detected you several minutes ago. I'm not here to hurt you. My name is Marcus, and I'm human." Zara's mind reeled. Humans were mentioned in the galactic database, but they were classified as a primitive species that had barely achieved interstellar travel. Their homeworld was located in a remote spiral arm, far from any major trade routes or strategic resources. What was a human doing on Zirion 7, and how did he speak galactic standard? "I can see from my medical scanner that you're badly injured," the voice continued. "Your biosigns indicate severe atmospheric poisoning and what looks like an infected wound. If you don't receive treatment soon, you'll be dead within hours." The matter-of-fact tone in which he delivered this assessment was somehow more frightening than any threat. Zara gripped her plasma pistol tighter, though her hand was shaking badly now. The toxins were affecting her nervous system, making fine motor control increasingly difficult. "Look," the human said, his voice taking on a gentler tone, "I understand you're scared. You've been abandoned on a hostile world, and now some unknown alien is telling you to trust him. But I'm probably your only chance of survival. My ship has a full medical bay, and I know how to treat atmospheric poisoning in most galactic species." Against her better judgment, Zara found herself wanting to believe him. The alternative was certain death, either from the toxins or from the hegemony patrols that would eventually find her. What did she have to lose? "How do I know you're not working for the hegemony?" she called out, her voice hoarse from days of breathing the toxic air. There was a pause, then, the human chuckled, a sound that held no humor. "The hegemony killed my entire crew 3 days ago," he said quietly. "I'm the only survivor of the science vessel Endurance. We were studying the same ruins you were when they attacked. I've been tracking survivor signals across the planet, trying to find anyone else who made it out alive." The pieces began falling into place. The battle had involved multiple ships, but, in the chaos of combat, she had only been aware of her own vessel's desperate fight for survival. There must have been other research teams in the area, other ships caught in the same trap. "Why should I trust you?" Zara asked, though her resolve was weakening with each passing moment. The pain in her leg was getting worse, and dark spots were beginning to dance at the edges of her vision. "Because," Marcus replied, "I've already saved 7 other survivors, and I'm not about to start abandoning people now. The hegemony wants to exterminate everyone who witnessed what they're doing in this sector. As far as I'm concerned, that makes us allies." Zara closed her eyes, weighing her options one final time. She could stay hidden and die slowly from poisoning, she could surrender to the next hegemony patrol and die quickly under interrogation, or she could trust this unknown human and possibly live to see another day. When she put it like that, the choice was obvious. Slowly, she pushed open the damaged door and emerged from her hiding place, keeping her plasma pistol visible but not directly threatening. The figure that greeted her was unlike anything she had expected. Marcus was tall and lean, dressed in some form of advanced environmental suit that seemed to shimmer and adapt to its surroundings. His equipment was clearly sophisticated, featuring technology she didn't recognize but that appeared more advanced than anything in her people's arsenal. Most surprising of all, he moved with the confidence of someone completely at home in this hostile environment. "There you are," he said, his voice warm with genuine relief. "Let's get you out of here before the next patrol arrives." Marcus moved with practiced efficiency as he examined Zara's condition, his hands working quickly over a medical scanner that looked far more sophisticated than anything she had seen in Kalari technology. The device projected a 3-dimensional image of her internal systems, highlighting damaged areas in red and displaying data streams she couldn't interpret. "Atmospheric toxin buildup is severe, but not irreversible," he murmured to himself, making notes on a handheld device. "Infection in the leg wound is spreading, but responds well to broad-spectrum antibiotics. Dehydration and malnutrition are significant factors." Zara watched him work, still struggling to understand what she was seeing. Everything about this human contradicted the database entries she had studied. According to galactic records, humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel within the last century, and their technology was considered primitive by most standards. Yet Marcus carried equipment that seemed generations ahead of her own people's science. "How is this possible?" she asked weakly as he prepared an injection from his medical kit. "The galactic database says humans are barely spacefaring." Marcus paused and looked up at her with eyes that held depths of experience she hadn't expected. "The galactic database is incomplete," he said simply. "My people prefer to let others underestimate us. It's served us well in situations like this." He administered the injection with a skill that spoke of extensive medical training. Almost immediately, Zara felt some of the crushing weight in her chest begin to ease as the medication counteracted the atmospheric toxins. The pain in her leg also began to subside for the first time in days. "That should stabilize you for transport," Marcus said, packing away his equipment. "My ship is about 2 kilometers from here, hidden in a canyon system the hegemony hasn't found yet." "Can you walk that far, or do I need to carry you?" The very fact that he offered to carry her showed how different he was from her own people's rescue crew. The Kalari valued efficiency above all else, calculating every action in terms of resource expenditure and survival probability. This human seemed to operate by entirely different principles. "I can walk," Zara said, testing her weight on the injured leg. The medication had reduced the pain significantly, though she could tell the wound itself still needed proper treatment. "But won't the hegemony patrols detect us moving across open ground?" Marcus smiled, an expression that transformed his face from merely determined to genuinely reassuring. "Not if we're careful. I've been tracking their patrol patterns for days. They're predictable, which is both good and bad news. Good because I can avoid them, bad because it means they're not taking this operation seriously." As they left the shelter of the wreckage, Zara got her first clear look at the equipment Marcus carried. His environmental suit was unlike anything she had encountered, seeming to adapt its color and texture to match their surroundings. The various devices attached to his belt hummed with quiet efficiency, and she caught glimpses of readouts displaying information about atmospheric conditions, radiation levels, and electromagnetic signatures. "You've been tracking 7 other survivors?" she asked as they made their way carefully through the debris field surrounding the crash site. "6 now," Marcus corrected grimly. "Lost one yesterday to a hegemony patrol. They're not taking prisoners." His jaw tightened as he spoke, and Zara caught a glimpse of the anger he kept carefully controlled beneath his helpful exterior. They moved in silence for several minutes, Marcus leading the way with the confidence of someone who knew the terrain intimately. He avoided areas where the toxic atmosphere was particularly concentrated, skirted around radiation zones that Zara's scanner hadn't even detected, and chose paths that provided maximum cover from aerial surveillance. "Your equipment," Zara said during a rest stop, unable to contain her curiosity any longer. "Where did you get technology like this?" "The medical scanner alone is more advanced than anything my people's military uses." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, seeming to weigh how much to reveal. "Humans have been spacefaring longer than most species realize," he finally said. "We just haven't advertised the fact. When you're a small, relatively weak species in a galaxy full of bigger, stronger neighbors, discretion can be the difference between survival and extinction. But surely someone would have detected your presence, your technology level." "Would they?" Marcus asked, raising an eyebrow. "How often do major galactic powers really investigate backwater species in remote sectors? Most of the data in the galactic database was compiled centuries ago and never updated. As long as we kept a low profile and didn't threaten anyone's interests, we were largely ignored." The implications of what he was saying began to sink in. If humans had been hiding their true capabilities for generations, what else might the galactic database be wrong about? How many other species were playing similar games of deception and misdirection? "The hegemony found out, though," Zara observed. "That's why they attacked your ship along with ours." Marcus's expression darkened. "The hegemony has been probing outer rim territories for months, testing defenses and cataloging resources. They're planning something big, and they can't afford to have unknown variables like us running around gathering intelligence." They resumed walking, following a route that took them through a series of naturally formed trenches that provided excellent concealment from aerial observation. Zara noticed that Marcus seemed to know exactly where he was going, never hesitating at intersections or checking his navigation equipment. "How long have you been on this planet?" she asked. 3 days, same as you." "But I've been busy." He gestured to a barely visible path worn into the rocky ground. "I've mapped most of this region, cataloged the hazards, and established supply caches at regular intervals. When you're responsible for other people's survival, preparation becomes essential." The difference between Marcus and her own people's rescue captain couldn't have been more stark. Where the Kalari had calculated resource expenditure and written her off as an unacceptable risk, this human had spent 3 days preparing to save people he hadn't even found yet. "Why?" she asked. "Why go to all this trouble for strangers? Your ship could have left the system by now. You could be safe." Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious. "Because that's not who humans are," he said simply. "We don't abandon people. It's not in our nature." Something in his voice suggested this was more than mere species pride. There was conviction there, a fundamental belief that ran deeper than military training or cultural conditioning. Zara had studied many species during her career as an exploration team member, and she had never encountered anything quite like it. They reached the edge of the trench system as the triple suns began to set, casting long shadows across the alien landscape. In the distance, Zara could see the canyon Marcus had mentioned, a jagged scar in the planet's surface that would provide excellent concealment for a hidden ship. "We'll wait here until the patrol passes," Marcus said, consulting a device that appeared to be tracking multiple contacts across a wide area. "They sweep this sector every evening at approximately the same time." Very predictable. As if summoned by his words, the distant hum of engines became audible. Zara pressed herself against the rocky wall of the trench as lights appeared on the horizon, moving in the systematic search pattern she had observed before. Marcus seemed completely calm, checking his equipment and making notes on his handheld device. "Patrol consists of 6 ships," he murmured, apparently narrating his observations. "Standard formation, moving at constant altitude. They're not expecting trouble, which means they haven't detected my ship yet." The patrol ships passed overhead, their searchlights probing the landscape but missing the concealed trench entirely. Zara realized that Marcus hadn't found this hiding spot by accident. He had scouted the area thoroughly and chosen a route that would minimize their exposure to detection. "Clear," he announced after the engine noise faded into the distance. "We have approximately 6 hours before the next sweep. More than enough time to reach my ship and get you properly treated." They emerged from the trench and made their way toward the canyon, moving quickly but carefully across terrain that seemed to shift between rocky waste and areas of crystalline formations that rang like bells under their footsteps. Zara noticed that Marcus always chose paths that would muffle sound, avoiding surfaces that might betray their presence to listening devices. "The other survivors you mentioned," Zara said as they walked, "what species are they?" "Mixed group," Marcus replied. 2 Zolani from a geological survey team, 1 Thraxian military observer, a Corvan merchant who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and 2 Altarians from a cultural exchange mission. All of them written off as dead by their respective governments. "How do you know they've been written off?" Marcus tapped his handheld device. "I've been monitoring communications traffic in this sector. Each government filed casualty reports within hours of the attack. No rescue missions have been authorized. As far as the galaxy is concerned, we're all dead." The casual way he delivered this information was almost more shocking than the content itself. Zara had known intellectually that her own people had abandoned her, but she hadn't considered the broader implications. If no one was coming to look for survivors, then Marcus truly was their only hope of escape. "Your ship," she said, "can it carry 8 people safely?" 9, counting you," Marcus corrected. "And, yes, it can carry that many and more. The Endurance was designed for long-range exploration missions with extended crews. Life support isn't an issue." They reached the edge of the canyon as the last traces of sunlight faded from the sky. Looking down into the shadow depths, Zara could barely make out what looked like artificial structures built into the canyon walls. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she realized she was looking at one of the most ingeniously concealed vessels she had ever seen. The ship had been positioned to look like a natural rock formation, its hull covered with materials that mimicked the local geology. Heat baffles disguised its energy signature, and what she had initially taken for random boulders were actually carefully placed sensor arrays and defensive emplacements. "Impressive," she admitted. "How long did it take you to set this up?" "About 18 hours, Marcus said matter-of-factly. "The ship's systems are designed for rapid concealment in hostile territory. It's a human innovation, we call it adaptive camouflage. Very useful when you're operating in areas where you're not supposed to exist." They made their way down a concealed path that had been carved into the canyon wall with precision tools. Zara noticed that every aspect of the approach had been designed to minimize detection, from the angles that would hide them from overhead surveillance to the materials used to construct handholds and steps. "The technology you're using," she said as they descended, "it's not just advanced. It's specifically designed for covert operations. This isn't exploration equipment." Marcus glanced back at her with an expression that might have been approval. "Very observant. You're right, of course. The Endurance wasn't purely a science vessel, though that was part of our mission. Humans have been quietly gathering intelligence on galactic politics for decades. We needed to understand the major powers before we decided how much of ourselves to reveal." "And what did you conclude?" "That we were right to be cautious," Marcus replied grimly. "The hegemony's expansion into this sector is just the beginning. They're preparing for a much larger conflict, one that could destabilize the entire galactic community. Species that might have been safe through isolation are now potential targets." They reached the ship's concealed airlock, and Marcus began the process of identity verification. Zara watched in fascination as multiple scanning systems examined him from different angles, apparently checking not just biometric data but also behavioral patterns and equipment signatures. "Security is impressive," she observed. "Paranoia is a survival trait," Marcus replied. "My people learned long ago that trust is a luxury we can't always afford." The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss, revealing an interior that was both functional and surprisingly comfortable. "Welcome aboard the Endurance," Marcus said as they stepped inside. "Let's get you properly healed, and then you can meet the others. We have a lot to discuss about getting off this planet alive." The interior of the Endurance was unlike any ship Zara had ever been aboard. The corridors were wider than necessary for purely functional purposes, with subtle lighting that adapted to the presence of different species. The air itself felt cleaner and more comfortable than the carefully recycled atmosphere of most vessels, and she noticed that the artificial gravity was perfectly calibrated for optimal comfort across multiple physiologies. Marcus led her through a series of passages that branched off from the main corridor, each one leading to sections designed for specific purposes. She caught glimpses of laboratories, workshops, and what appeared to be multiple recreational areas. This was clearly a ship designed for long missions with crew members who came from very different worlds. "The medical bay is this way," Marcus said, guiding her through an archway that scanned them both before allowing passage. "Dr. Chen will want to examine you properly. She's our chief medical officer and probably knows more about multi-species physiology than anyone in this sector." "Dr. Chen is human?" "Yes, though she's worked extensively with alien medical techniques. Humans have a talent for adapting and combining different approaches to problem solving. It's served us well in fields like medicine and engineering." They entered a medical facility that took Zara's breath away. The equipment was not just advanced but clearly designed to treat dozens of different species simultaneously. Diagnostic beds that could adapt their configuration, atmospheric processors that could create customized breathing environments, and medical scanners that could penetrate the natural defenses of even the most heavily armored alien physiologies. "My God, what happened to her?" The voice came from a woman who emerged from what appeared to be a surgical preparation area. Dr. Chen was small and compact, with graying hair and hands that moved with the precision of someone who had spent decades saving lives. Her eyes, however, held the same depth of experience Zara had noticed in Marcus. "Atmospheric poisoning, infected wound, severe dehydration, and malnutrition," Marcus reported efficiently. "I administered emergency stabilization medications about an hour ago, but she needs comprehensive treatment." Dr. Chen was already guiding Zara toward one of the diagnostic beds, her scanner revealing the extent of damage that 3 days on a hostile world had inflicted. The physician's expression grew increasingly concerned as she reviewed the data, muttering observations in what sounded like multiple languages. "You've been breathing that toxic atmosphere for 3 days?" Dr. Chen asked incredulously. "Your cellular regeneration should have shut down completely. What's your normal atmospheric composition?" Zara provided the specifications for Kalari atmospheric requirements, watching as Dr. Chen input the data into her treatment system. Within moments, the air around the diagnostic bed shifted to match her species' optimal breathing mixture, and she felt her lungs relax for the first time since the crash. "Better?" Dr. Chen asked, noting the immediate improvement in Zara's vital signs. "Good. Now let's deal with that infection before it kills you." As the physician worked, Zara found herself studying the medical equipment with professional fascination. Her exploration team training included basic medical knowledge, and she recognized advanced techniques from a dozen different species, all integrated into a seamless treatment system. "This technology," she said as Dr. Chen prepared a series of injections, "it's not just human innovation, is it? You've been studying and adapting medical techniques from across the galaxy." "For centuries," Dr. Chen confirmed. "Humans have always been good at learning from others. We observe, we adapt, we improve. Sometimes that means taking the best ideas from different cultures and finding ways to combine them." The treatment process was unlike anything Zara had experienced. Instead of the focused, species-specific medicine she was accustomed to, Dr. Chen used an approach that seemed to address her injuries on multiple levels simultaneously. The infection in her leg responded to a combination of Thraxian antibiotics and Alterian regenerative therapy, while the atmospheric poisoning was countered with a treatment protocol that drew from at least 4 different medical traditions. "How long have humans really been spacefaring?" Zara asked as the treatment continued. "Not the official timeline in the galactic database, but the truth." Dr. Chen and Marcus exchanged a look that suggested this was a question they had debated before. Finally, Dr. Chen spoke. "Humans achieved interstellar travel over 300 years ago," she said quietly. "But we were smart enough to realize we weren't ready for contact with galactic civilization. So we watched, we learned, and we prepared." "Prepared for what?" "For exactly what's happening now," Marcus said grimly. "The hegemony's expansion isn't random. They've been systematically targeting species and regions that could threaten their dominance. Species like yours, with advanced exploration capabilities. Species like mine, with adaptive technologies they don't understand. The implications were staggering. If humans had been observing galactic politics for centuries, they would have a perspective on current events that no other species possessed. They would understand patterns and connections that others had missed. The attack on our ships, Zara said as understanding dawned, it wasn't coincidental, was it? The hegemony knew we were here. They'd been tracking exploration missions across this entire sector, Dr. Chin confirmed as she sealed the healing wound on Zara's leg with a bioregenerative membrane. Any species showing interest in these ancient ruins becomes a target. They can't afford to have others discover what's really here. What is here? Zara asked. Our initial surveys suggested the ruins were millions of years old, left by some extinct civilization. Interesting archaeologically, but hardly worth starting a war over. Marcus activated a holographic display that showed the planet's surface in remarkable detail. The ruins her team had been studying appeared as just one small cluster among dozens of similar sites scattered across multiple continents. But the display revealed something their limited survey had missed. The sites were connected by a vast underground network of tunnels and chambers. The civilization that built these structures wasn't extinct, Marcus explained. They went dormant. And, according to our analysis, they're beginning to wake up. The revelation hit Zara like a physical blow. An ancient civilization stirring to life would represent a potential shift in galactic power that dwarfed any current political conflict. No wonder the hegemony was willing to eliminate witnesses. How do you know this? She asked. Because we've been in contact with them, Dr. Chen said simply. Limited contact, but enough to understand that they're evaluating whether current galactic civilization is ready for their return. The hegemony's aggressive expansion is exactly the kind of behavior that concerns them. Zara struggled to process what she was hearing. First contact with an ancient civilization was supposed to be handled through carefully established protocols, with representatives from major galactic powers working together to ensure peaceful interaction. Instead, she was learning that humans had been conducting secret negotiations that could affect the fate of every known species. That's why you're really here, she realized. Not just for exploration or intelligence gathering. You're representatives. Among other things, Marcus acknowledged. The ancient ones call themselves the architects. They've been watching galactic civilization develop for millions of years, occasionally providing subtle guidance to promising species. Humans caught their attention because of our adaptive nature and our reluctance to engage in large-scale conquest. So when the hegemony started targeting this sector, the architects asked us to document what was happening and help preserve any surviving witnesses. They want to understand how current galactic powers respond to the discovery of their existence before they decide whether to reveal themselves. Dr. Chen completed her treatment and helped Zara sit up on the diagnostic bed. The improvement in her condition was remarkable. The infection was completely gone, the atmospheric toxins had been neutralized, and her cellular regeneration was back to normal levels. She felt stronger than she had since before the crash. The other survivors, Zara said, do they know about any of this? Not yet, Marcus replied. We've been focused on keeping them alive first. But they'll need to know soon. The hegemony won't give up searching for witnesses, and hiding on this planet isn't a long-term solution. What is the long-term solution? Marcus and Dr. Chen exchanged another look, this one filled with uncertainty. That depends partly on what the architects decide, Dr. Chen said. And partly on whether the survivors want to help expose what the hegemony is really doing in this sector. Help how? By testifying to the Galactic Council, Marcus explained. With multiple witnesses from different species, all corroborating the same story, we might be able to stop the hegemony's expansion before it goes too far. But it would mean revealing the existence of the architects, and none of us know how the major powers would react to that news. Zara considered the implications. Revealing the existence of an ancient, powerful civilization would indeed cause massive disruption to current galactic politics. Some species would welcome the return of the architects as a stabilizing influence, while others would see them as a threat to be eliminated. The potential for conflict was enormous. What do the architects want? She asked. Peace and stability, Dr. Chen replied. They've spent millions of years nurturing the development of intelligence in this galaxy. They don't want to see it destroyed by aggressive expansion and territorial conflicts. But they're willing to intervene if necessary? Marcus nodded grimly. If the hegemony continues its current path, the architects will have no choice but to act directly. And they have capabilities that make the hegemony's military look primitive by comparison. The idea of an ancient civilization possessing technology millions of years more advanced than current galactic standards was both reassuring and terrifying. Such beings could indeed stop the hegemony's expansion, but they could also reshape galactic civilization according to their own vision. I want to meet the other survivors, Zara said after a moment of consideration. Before I decide anything, I need to understand what we're really facing. Of course, Marcus agreed. They're in the main common area. Fair warning, though, they're not all happy about being stuck here. Some of them just want to go home and pretend none of this ever happened. Dr. Chen handed Zara a small device that looked like a combination translator and medical monitor. This will help you communicate with the others and track your recovery progress, she explained. The treatment I gave you should hold, but let me know immediately if you experience any unusual symptoms. As they left the medical bay, Zara found herself wondering about the choices that lay ahead. 3 days ago, she had been a simple exploration team member studying ancient ruins for their archaeological value. Now she was being asked to help expose a conspiracy that could reshape galactic politics and potentially trigger the return of a civilization that had been dormant since before her species had achieved spaceflight. Marcus, she said as they walked toward the common area, why are you really doing this? Saving random survivors, risking exposure of your people's secrets, potentially starting a galactic crisis? What's in it for humans? Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her with an expression that was both serious and sad. Because if we don't do something, the hegemony will eventually come for us too, he said quietly. They're systematically eliminating any species that might challenge their dominance. Today it's exploration teams investigating ancient ruins. Tomorrow it'll be anyone who possesses technology they don't understand or cultural values they consider threatening. So this is about human survival? Ultimately, yes. But it's also about something more than that. Marcus resumed walking, his pace slower now, more thoughtful. Humans have been watching galactic civilization for centuries, and we've seen patterns that worry us. The tendency towards centralization of power, the gradual suppression of diversity, the increasing willingness to solve problems through force rather than diplomacy. The hegemony represents the worst extreme of those trends? Exactly. If they succeed in consolidating power across the sector, it'll be the beginning of the end for independent species throughout the galaxy. The architects understand this, which is why they're finally willing to act. But they prefer to work through existing political structures rather than imposing solutions by force. They reached the entrance to the common area, where Zara could hear voices speaking in multiple languages, all with the undertones of stress and uncertainty that marked people dealing with survival situations. Whatever lay ahead, she was about to meet the others who would help determine the future of galactic civilization. The common area of the Endurance buzzed with tension as 8 very different beings tried to process the magnitude of what Marcus and Dr. Chen had just revealed. Zara sat quietly in one corner, still adjusting to being around so many people after days of isolation, watching as representatives of 6 species grappled with decisions that could reshape galactic civilization. Commander Thax, the Thraxian military observer, was the first to voice what many were thinking. You expect us to believe that humans have been secretly conducting diplomacy with an ancient civilization for months, and now you want us to help expose a conspiracy that could trigger a galactic war? I don't expect you to believe anything, Marcus replied calmly. I expect you to look at the evidence and reach your own conclusions. The hegemony attacked our ships because we were investigating ruins that aren't actually ruins. They're eliminating witnesses to prevent word from spreading. These are facts, not theories. Keela and Boss, the 2 Zilani geologists, had been examining the holographic data Marcus provided, their scaled hands moving rapidly over the display as they analyzed subsurface scans and energy readings. The geological data supports his claims, Keela said reluctantly. These structures show signs of recent activity, not ancient abandonment. There are power sources operating deep underground, environmental systems maintaining optimal conditions in sealed chambers. That doesn't prove the existence of this architect civilization, Merchant Corvin interjected. His blue-green skin had taken on the darker hue that indicated stress in his species. These could be automated systems left behind by a truly extinct race, or even hegemony installations designed to look ancient. Dr. Yaira, one of the Altarian cultural specialists, had been unusually quiet throughout the discussion. Her species was known for their analytical approach to complex problems, and Zara noticed she had been taking detailed notes on everything that had been said. The cultural implications alone make this worth investigating, she finally said. If the hegemony is willing to eliminate exploration teams to hide something, then that something represents a significant threat to their expansion plans. Or a significant opportunity, added her colleague, Dr. Nas. Ancient technology, strategic resources, weapons systems, any of these could explain their behavior without requiring us to believe in dormant supercivilizations. Marcus activated another section of the holographic display, showing what appeared to be a vast underground complex extending far beyond the visible ruins. 3 days ago, I made direct contact with an architect representative, he said quietly. The conversation lasted approximately 10 minutes, during which I received more information about galactic history than our species has accumulated in 3 centuries of observation. The room fell silent. Direct contact with unknown alien intelligence was supposed to be reported immediately to galactic authorities, following protocols designed to prevent misunderstandings that could lead to conflict. Marcus had violated fundamental laws of interspecies relations. You committed an act of unauthorized first contact, Commander Thek said, his voice heavy with the implications. That's a capital offense under galactic law. Galactic law assumes that first contact involves previously unknown species, Dr. Chen pointed out. The architects have been observing and, occasionally interacting with galactic civilization for millions of years. They're not unknown, they're simply unacknowledged. Zara found her voice for the first time since joining the group. What did they tell you? She asked Marcus. In that 10-minute conversation, what did you learn? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing how much to reveal. They showed me the true scope of the hegemony's plans, he said finally. This sector is just the beginning. They intend to systematically conquer or eliminate every independent species in the galaxy, creating a unified empire under their control. The timeline for completion is approximately 50 standard years. Impossible, Merchant Corvin protested. The logistical requirements alone would be beyond any known military capability. The hegemony is powerful, but they're not that powerful. They are if they have access to architect technology, Marcus replied grimly. The hegemony discovered evidence of the architect's existence approximately 6 months ago. Since then, they've been trying to find a way to access architect installations and steal their technology. The exploration teams they've been attacking weren't just witnesses to be silenced, they were potential competitors in the race to find architect sites. Dr. Yaira leaned forward, her expression intense. You're saying the hegemony already has some form of architect technology? Limited access, Marcus confirmed. Enough to enhance their existing capabilities, not enough to pose a direct threat to the architects themselves. But, if they succeed in gaining full access to architect installations, the balance of power in the galaxy would shift permanently. Commander Thek stood up abruptly, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the holographic displays in fractured patterns. This is insane, he declared. You're asking us to take the word of a human ship that's been operating in violation of galactic law, based on conversations with beings that may or may not exist, to prevent a conspiracy that sounds like something from a paranoid fiction novel. I'm not asking you to take anyone's word for anything, Marcus said patiently. I'm offering to show you proof. The Thraxian stopped moving, his attention suddenly focused. What kind of proof? Direct communication with an architect representative. They're willing to meet with all of you, to answer questions and provide evidence of what they've told me. But it has to be a group decision. They won't risk exposure unless everyone agrees to participate. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. The opportunity to communicate directly with a civilization that predated galactic history was beyond anything she had imagined when she joined the exploration service. It was also potentially the most dangerous thing any of them could do. What are the risks? She asked. Unknown, Dr. Chen admitted. The architects have demonstrated no hostile intent toward any of us, but we're dealing with beings whose capabilities we can't fully comprehend. There's always the possibility that contact could go wrong in ways we can't anticipate. And, if we refuse? Keela asked. Then, we try to escape this planet on our own, Marcus said. The Endurance can carry all of us, and we have enough supplies for a journey to neutral territory. From there, you can return to your home worlds and report whatever version of events you feel comfortable sharing. But the hegemony will continue their expansion, Dr. Nas pointed out. And, eventually, they'll target species that aren't prepared to defend themselves. That's the choice we're facing, Marcus agreed. Personal safety versus collective responsibility. I can't make that decision for any of you, but I can tell you what the architects told me. If the current trajectory continues, galactic civilization as we know it will cease to exist within a century. Merchant Corvin had been unusually quiet, his skin color cycling through various shades as he processed the information. Finally, he spoke. My people have trading relationships across dozens of sectors, he said slowly. In recent months, we've noticed unusual military buildups, restricted shipping lanes, and increased paranoia among our regular customers. If what you're describing is true, it would explain patterns we've been attributing to routine political instability. The hegemony has been testing responses, Dr. Chen confirmed. Gradually escalating their activities to see how other species react. So far, the response has been fragmented and ineffective, exactly what they hoped for. Zara looked around the room at the faces of beings from 6 different worlds, all struggling with the same impossible decision. They were exploration team members, scientists, and civilians who had been thrust into a situation that called for diplomatic and military expertise none of them possessed. There's something else we need to consider, she said quietly. Even if we make contact with the architects and gather evidence of the hegemony's plans, who would we report to? The Galactic Council? Individual species governments? Any organization powerful enough to act on this information is also powerful enough to suppress it if it serves their interests. The architects have been considering the same problem, Marcus admitted. That's part of why they're willing to reveal themselves now. They believe the current crisis requires direct intervention, but they prefer to work through existing political structures rather than imposing solutions by force. What does that mean, exactly? Commander Thex asked suspiciously. It means they want to offer technological and military assistance to species willing to resist hegemony expansion, Dr. Chen explained. Not conquest or control, but partnership. Species that prove they can use advanced capabilities responsibly would gain access to architect knowledge and resources. The implications were staggering. Access to architect technology could leapfrog any species centuries ahead in scientific and military development. It could also create new forms of inequality and conflict as some species gained advantages others lacked. This is too big for us, Dr. Yaira said finally. We're talking about decisions that could affect billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. How can we possibly make choices like that? Because someone has to, Marcus replied simply. The hegemony is counting on fragmented responses and paralysis in the face of overwhelming complexity. While everyone debates jurisdiction and protocol, they continue consolidating power. Zara stood up, her injured leg steadied beneath her for the first time in days. I've been abandoned once already, she said, addressing the group. My own people wrote me off as expendable when helping me became inconvenient. If we walk away from this, we're doing the same thing to entire civilizations that might need our help. You're willing to make contact with the architects? Keela asked. I'm willing to listen, Zara corrected. After that, we can decide whether to act on what we learn. But I won't run away without at least understanding what we're facing. One by one, the others voiced their agreement. Even Commander Thex, despite his obvious reservations, acknowledged that gathering more information was better than making decisions based on speculation. Only Merchant Corvin remained undecided, his skin color continuing to cycle through patterns that indicated deep internal conflict. My people value stability above all else, he said finally. We've survived and prospered by avoiding entanglement in the conflicts of larger powers. What you're proposing could make us targets. What the hegemony is planning will make everyone targets eventually, Marcus pointed out. The choice isn't whether to be involved, but whether to be involved as willing participants or unwilling victims. Corvin was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll participate in the contact attempt, he said. But I reserve the right to withdraw if I believe my people's interests are threatened. Marcus activated his communication device and spoke briefly in a language Zara didn't recognize. The response came immediately, in a voice that seemed to resonate from the ship's walls themselves rather than any specific speaker. The architect representative will meet with us in 1 hour, Marcus announced. I suggest we all use that time to prepare whatever questions we want to ask. This may be our only opportunity to speak directly with someone who has witnessed the entire history of galactic civilization. As the group dispersed to prepare for what might be the most important conversation in galactic history, Zara found herself thinking about the journey that had brought her to this moment. 3 days ago, she had been dying alone on a hostile world, abandoned by her own people and facing certain death. Now she was about to participate in first contact with an ancient civilization that could reshape the future of every known species. The irony wasn't lost on her. Sometimes being left behind was exactly where you needed to be to find something extraordinary. And sometimes the greatest discoveries came not from seeking the unknown, but from having the courage to listen when the unknown chose to speak.